Wait a minute. Can we get something Roman to happen here? Hi, everybody. Welcome to Bookies, and thanks for clicking on this no spoiler review of The Wolf Den by Elodie Harper. This is the first novel in a series of 3. I figured we'd just take a little bit of time to talk about it, and who knows, when we're done, maybe you'll want to read it. I like books, you like books, so let's talk about The Wolf Den. First, this novel is set in 1st century AD in Pompeii. Pompeii was south of Rome, and it was kind of considered the place where wealthy and influential Romans would go to vacation. It's also located right next to Vesuvius, and Mount Vesuvius did erupt and ultimately destroy Pompeii. However, Vesuvius plays absolutely no role in this particular novel. And I do feel like I should probably not raise my voice when talking about volcanoes, because I'm in Northern California and we have volcanoes and they don't like to be disturbed. Just 20 miles that way, Mount Lassen. 60 miles over my shoulder, Mount Shasta. So when it comes to volcanoes, I'm going to kind of keep it down. Actually, I'm not going to keep it down. I think we're okay. So this does remind me of a segment I'm going to put in right here that I'm going to call Idiotic Reviews That I've Read on Goodreads. Here's an idiotic 1-star review that I read on Goodreads about The Wolf Den. I'm giving it 1 star because it didn't talk about Vesuvius. Well, that's kind of stupid. That's like giving To Kill a Mockingbird 1 star because no birds were killed. And how dumb is that, right? All right, I'm concluding my old guy rant now. So let's just go ahead and talk about this particular novel. This is a no spoiler review, but I feel like it's okay to tell you that the main character in this novel is a prostitute named Amara, who was born and raised in Greece, but because her family became destitute, she was sold into slavery and then ultimately resold again into prostitution in Pompeii. The thrust of the novel is essentially, will Amara find her way out of prostitution? You know, is there a yellow brick road here that she can follow to get to a happier life? It's a pretty simple premise, and maybe Harper could have done a bit more than just leave it at that. But before I tell you what I didn't like, let's get to what I liked. The characters in the brothel, the Wolf's Den, all well crafted. Dido, Victoria, Beronice, Cressa, incredibly well drafted. Each is unique, and Harper avoids a lot of cliches of that you might think with regard to prostitutes as being cold and unfeeling. Quite the contrary. Each one of these characters is very real, has emotions, and is basically a victim of the cruelties in their life. And these women are so starved of love and affection. And the hardest part is that they know that if they fall in love with somebody, that love can never be reciprocated back to them because they sell their bodies. And I love the fact that Elodie Harper made these women sympathetic, and you will feel empathetic towards each and every one of them. I really like that this novel is somewhat gritty and honest about the trade or the business of being a prostitute. One of the characters goes into the loan sharking business because the ultimate goal is to earn enough money to where you can buy your freedom. And so the prostitute that goes into the loan shark business becomes as cruel and indifferent about the suffering of others as her own pimp is to her. Another one of the prostitutes falls in love with her own pimp, Felix, even though Felix is sexually abusive, physically abusive, emotionally abusive. It's kind of a Stockholm syndrome thing where this prostitute is just trying to find some kind of human connection in a world that's terrible to her. Each of these characters is hoping to find happiness, hoping to find a way out of their situation. And really, in this kind of situation of hopelessness, the only thing that they can own are their feelings. And nobody can take that away from them. So Harper does an excellent job of really creating this sense of desperation. It's desperation to leave what's happening to them, and it's also hopelessness, knowing that the chances of that happening are just 1 in a million. Harper does well in creating the situation that we kind of all would recognize with regard to prostitution, that despite the empathy, ultimately, when other people look at these women, all they're seeing is property. All they're seeing is a one-dimensional object to be used. And to illustrate, one of the characters guesses that Amara didn't really start life as a prostitute. She started life as the daughter of an influential physician. But she picked up on this. She said, "You didn't start life as a prostitute." And when Amara says, "Well, how do you know that?" the reply was, "You still act like you matter." And that's just kind of sad, because everybody matters. But like I said, Harper's using this dialogue just to kind of emphasize the point of the hopelessness of being a prostitute, particularly in first century Pompeii. Another thing I liked about this novel is there are elements of humor. Each chapter in the novel starts with a quote, usually from a historical figure in the first century AD Rome, and some of them are quite comical. So here's one. "Sextus, you say their passion for you sets the pretty girls on fire. You have the face of a man swimming underwater." That's pretty insulting. And it's kind of funny too. That's the kind of thing that you say to a man, and you either have to hit him while he's trying to sort out what that means, or you need to run away while he's trying to sort out what that means. But the point of that particular quote is just to show you that these chapters are set off by interesting, sometimes quite comical quotes. The other thing I really liked about this particular novel is the descriptions of the brothel are excellent. It's like a scene from hell, or, well, Hades in this context, with an endless procession of drunken men, dingy dark rooms, smoke, sooty, angry, shouting people, some of the prostitutes weeping because they've been beat up or weeping out of helplessness. And it's really, this is a really environmentally sound novel. You get what a brothel might have been like in Pompeii. So as criticisms, I have a couple. I do think this novel would have been a little bit improved from a dialogue perspective or an introspection kind of point of view if it would have been drafted in the first person perspective of Amara. Instead, we get third person, which kind of takes the reader outside of the characters to kind of spectate on them. Personally, I think something like this, when you're dealing with the subject matter, I'd rather be inside of the mind of Amara a little more deeply than we get to experience as readers. Another criticism is that I kind of feel like this novel, even though you do get some resolution as to whether Amara is going to escape prostitution or not, you get some resolution on that. I do feel like a lot of things were just kind of held off for maybe the second or third novel in this trilogy. And so I would have liked this one if it stood alone a little bit more. And probably my biggest critique about this novel is I feel like it could have very easily have been set in contemporary times. It didn't feel particularly Roman to me. So if you're a fan of historical fiction and you know, appreciate being immersed in the culture, it, that kind of doesn't happen too much here. I think this novel would have been much better if we would have been more imbued with the culture, the politics, and just the society of Pompeii a little bit deeper, because if those external things were crafted a little bit better, I think having a view of them from the bottom up as the prostitutes looking up at society, culture, politics, I think we would have got a much better atmosphere for this novel. All that being said, when you balance the pros and the cons, I think this is a worthy story of tragedy, hope, and intrigue. And if that's kind of what you look for in a novel, get this novel and read it. Yeah, it's good. I'm giving it 3.5 stars out of 5, which means it's above average. It's a good read. And with that, I would love to encourage you to like and subscribe to the channel. I hope that you appreciate honest book reviews. Yeah, I suppose if you put on the title of the video that it's a 5-star book, that more people are going to watch. But hopefully what you're getting from me, well, I know what you're getting from me, are honest book reviews. And with that, I want to wish you a good day and God bless.